He never understood why the bunker door groaned that way at dusk, like something inside didn't want to be left alone. But the night his dog slipped past him, tail low, ears sharp, and vanished into that frozen hallway, the boy realized the truth was waiting behind steel older than his father's bones. And once he saw what was hidden there, the whole mountain stopped feeling like home. The wind carried the smell of stone and pine as the mountain boy made his way down the narrow trail, the one that curled like a scar across the ridge. The last of the daylight faded behind the peaks, throwing long blue shadows across the woods, and for a moment he wondered if he should have turned back earlier. But mistakes always seemed to find him after sunset, and tonight, somehow, felt no different. His dog trotted ahead. Old Finn, the shaggy mutt he'd raised from a trembling pup, moving through the snow with the quiet confidence of a creature who trusted the mountain far more than any human could. When Finn paused, sniffed the cold air, and let out that soft, questioning growl, the boy followed without thinking. That was the moment he first saw it. The ugly steel jaws of the bunker door, half buried under decades of ice and moss, its hinges blackened by time. He'd walked this ridge since he could stand, but he'd never noticed the iron circle peeking from beneath the roots of an old cedar. Maybe the earth had shifted after the storm. Maybe the mountain wanted it revealed. He didn't know, but Finn did. The dog pressed his nose to the frozen metal and whimpered, not in fear, but in recognition. And that chilled the boy more than the cold ever could. He tugged the rusted handle without expecting much, but it moved, groaning slow, like a creature waking after years of forced silence. A breath of ancient air washed over him. Old concrete, old secrets, old things that weren't meant to see the sky again. His hands shook. He wasn't sure if it was the cold or the feeling that the past had just opened its one remaining eye. He didn't go inside that night. He wasn't brave enough. Not yet. Instead, he closed the hatch, covered it with snow, and hurried home with Finn, brushing against his leg like he knew the boy's heart was beating too fast. Their cabin waited beneath the ridge, small, crooked, built by his father's hands long before the war took him. The boy had learned to live alone in it, learned to chop wood, mend clothes, cook broth, patch leaks, and ignore the dusk when it pressed too close to the windows. He was 15, old enough to understand that the world didn't give second chances. But when he lay awake that night and felt the cold breath of wind slip under the cracks of the door, he knew the mountain had given him one anyway, and it scared him. Finn didn't sleep. The dog kept lifting his head, ears twitching toward the ridge, as if listening to something the boy couldn't hear, something that had been waiting too long to be forgotten. At dawn, he gave up pretending he could ignore it. He packed a lantern, an old coil of rope, and a small hatchet with a dull blade. Finn was already waiting at the door. The climb back up the ridge felt different in the morning light. The trees stood still, branches heavy with frost, and the air tasted sharper, colder, like the world was bracing for something. When he reached the hatch, he didn't pause. He brushed away the snow, gripped the iron wheel, and pulled. It opened faster this time, as if expecting him. Stale air coiled upward, brushing against his skin like fingers. He lowered the lantern through the opening and saw metal steps descending into shadow. Finn whined, nudging his hand. "I'll go first," the boy whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to reassure. The metal rungs groaned under his weight. Each step down felt like he was sinking through layers of time. By the time his boots touched concrete, he had lost sight of the sky. The bunker smelled like dust and forgotten paper. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and Cyrillic warnings he didn't recognize, though he knew enough history to understand what the red star on the far door meant. Soviet. Abandoned. Dangerous. He almost turned back. But Finn didn't let him. The dog slipped past him into the narrow corridor and stopped at the first doorway, staring at something inside the room. The boy lifted the lantern slowly. Rows of metal shelves sagged beneath the weight of old folders, maps, sealed containers marked with crossed hammers and faint stamps of a country that no longer existed. Cold air slid across his skin as he stepped inside, and the lantern flickered. He heard a soft movement, like fabric brushing metal, but when he turned, nothing was there. Finn growled, low and tense, but didn't back away. The boy's heartbeat thudded loud in his ears. He reached for the nearest folder, the paper stiff with age. The title read, Project Moraz Keep. A chill ran through him. That was his family name, had been for generations on this mountain. He opened it carefully, pages cracking at the spine. Blueprints, diagrams, a list of names, most crossed out in thick black ink. But one wasn't, his grandfather's. Below it, a line of handwritten text. Primary key carrier, protocol unbroken. He stumbled back. Finn barked sharply, pulling him from the panic rising beneath his ribs. His grandfather had died when he was 3. No one ever spoke about him, not his mother, not the few neighbors left on the mountain. They always said he served somewhere far north, where secrets froze into the ground. The boy never believed them. Now he wasn't sure what to believe. He set the folder down with trembling fingers and tried to steady his breathing. The air in the bunker felt heavier now, like the mountain was leaning against the roof, listening. Finn moved again, trotting deeper into the corridor, toward a second steel door with a faded sign. Lower access. Sealed by order of administration. The dog pawed at it once, then twice, then pressed his shoulder against the crack beneath the frame. Something had been pushed there recently. The boy knelt, lifting the edge of the lantern to see under the door. Something metal glinted back at him. A latch, a lock, a hatch inside the hatch. He swallowed hard. "Help me," he whispered, and Finn pushed closer. The boy braced his foot against the frame and pulled the outer latch. It resisted, then popped loose with a sharp metallic snap. The inner mechanism rattled. Something shifted behind the door, like a sigh from deep underground. The lower hatch dropped open just enough to reveal a sliver of the chamber below. The lantern's light reached only the first few steps. Beyond that, darkness. And in that darkness, something faint. A shape. A crate. A machine. It was impossible to tell. But the boy didn't move, because the air rising from below was warm, almost alive. He'd expected cold, expected silence. But this felt like breath. He backed away. Finn barked twice, urgently, tail stiff. The boy's vision blurred for a moment. The edges of the corridor darkened. His pulse hammered like someone knocking from inside his chest. He forced himself to breathe. He wasn't ready for whatever waited down there. He wasn't ready for what it meant that his grandfather's name was in those files. He wasn't ready to open a door sealed before he was born. He closed the lower hatch with shaking hands and locked it again. Finn whined, confused. "Tomorrow," the boy whispered. "We'll come back tomorrow." The climb out of the bunker felt longer than the descent, like the steps stretched under him, dragging time out slow. When he finally crawled back into the daylight, he sat in the snow, breathing hard, eyes fixed on the ridgeline, as if the mountain might offer some explanation. It didn't. He shut the steel hatch, wiped away the fresh marks in the snow, and started down toward home. The sky was already dimming, even though it wasn't yet noon. clouds gathering with a strange heaviness, pressing low, like the mountain itself was bracing for something to rise or fall. Finn stuck close to him the whole way, occasionally looking over his shoulder toward the ridge. They reached the cabin, just as the wind began to pick up. The boards creaked, the trees moaned, snow swirled in tight circles, twisting like smoke. The boy bolted the door and sat by the fire, trying to calm the tremor in his hands. He replayed every moment inside the bunker, his grandfather's name, the sealed hatch, the breath of warm air. Then Finn's ears shot forward. His whole body stiffened. Outside, something echoed faintly through the trees, a hollow clang, a metal shift, a sound no animal in the mountain could make. The boy stood frozen. The wind stopped. Even the fire seemed to pause. A second clang followed, deeper, closer, then silence. He whispered into the stillness, not sure if he was talking to Finn or to himself. Someone else found it. And for the first time in his life, the mountain didn't feel like it was his. Snow drifted against the cabin walls as the boy pressed his ear to the window frame, every muscle in his body locked in cold, fragile tension. The wind had died entirely, as if the whole mountain paused to listen. Finn growled low, the kind of growl that rose from an ancient place inside a dog, the place that remembered predators long before humans learned the comfort of fire. Another metallic thud echoed through the stillness, closer this time. Too close. The boy swallowed hard. Someone was forcing the bunker door, or something was already inside and trying to get out. He grabbed his coat and lantern, slipping outside into the brittle air. The forest felt wrong, too silent, too hungry. Finn rushed ahead, barking sharply, following a trail the boy couldn't see. Snow crushed under their boots and paws, the sound unnaturally loud in the empty woods. When they reached the ridge, the boy froze. The bunker hatch sat wide open, steel maw gaping upward like a dead eye. Snowflakes spun into the darkness below. But what made his stomach drop was the set of footprints leading inside. Human-sized, but heavier, as if whoever entered carried weight not fully their own. He considered turning back, considered running to Crowell for help, but something inside that bunker was moving beneath the earth, and if he didn't see what it was now, it might crawl out in the night. He stepped to the opening, lantern trembling in his grip. Finn whined, then descended first, tail low but determined. The boy followed, each rung groaning under him. The air felt thicker, warmer, pulsing with faint vibrations like distant engines buried in soil. When his boots finally hit concrete, he hesitated. The corridor lights, dead before, now flickered weakly, as if waking. He knew instantly that someone had disturbed more than dusty shelves and forgotten maps. The folders lay scattered across the floor, papers splayed like feathers, diagrams trampled and smeared. But the most terrifying sign was the lower hatch. It hung open, its inner bolts ripped clean out of the steel, torn by force not human. Warm air seeped from the staircase, accompanied by a faint rhythmic clicking, like metal joints flexing in the dark. Finn backed up, teeth bared, eyes fixed on the shadows beyond the opening. The boy tightened his grip on the lantern. "We're not alone," he whispered. He descended the lower stairs, each step pulsing beneath his feet like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. The landing at the bottom opened into a large chamber lined with rusting equipment, consoles, and strange cylindrical containers covered with frost. A humming rose from deeper within, low and steady, vibrating through the concrete walls. Finn barked once, sharply, and darted toward the far corner. The boy followed, and saw footprints, smeared and dragging, leading toward a large metal crate stamped with the same symbol he'd seen in the file. Project Moraz Keep. A chill ran down his spine. The crate's lid lay partly open, shattered along one hinge. Something had clawed through it from the inside, leaving deep metal gouges. A dark smear, cold but sticky, streaked across the floor. Not blood, not oil, something in between. The boy knelt, touching it gingerly. It clung to his glove with a faint warmth. Finn growled at the crate, fur bristling. The boy lifted the lantern closer and nearly dropped it. Inside lay a harness, tangled wires, shattered glass cylinders, equipment meant to restrain something, not store it, and a tag hung from a broken strap. Primary key. Dependent. Failsafe unit. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood enough. Something was kept here, contained, controlled, and it needed a key to stay asleep. His grandfather had been that key. And now, with his bloodline still alive in the boy, whatever was released might be drawn toward him. Or worse, freed because of him. He stumbled back, heart pounding hard enough to ache. Finn nudged his leg urgently, guiding him toward the corridor leading deeper into the bunker. The air grew warmer with each step. The clicking sound grew louder, and soon the boy realized it wasn't one sound. There were two. One rhythm was slow, heavy, deliberate, footsteps dragging something weighty across metal. The other was fast, sharp, like bones tapping steel. The lantern flickered as they neared a side room. The door hung open, hinges bent outward as though forced from within. The boy peeked inside and felt his breath catch. The room was filled with thick glass tanks, most shattered, their interiors lined with frost and dark residue. Something had thawed recently. The tanks' labels were written in Cyrillic, but one word repeated on several. Granital, protector, or keeper. But the broken tanks suggested something else. Captivity. Finn growled, backing away. The boy turned, lantern trembling, and froze. At the far end of the corridor, a figure stood, human-shaped, but wrong. Its shoulders slumped too low, its limbs bending in angles that defied bone. Its skin looked frostbitten, gray, cracked, shimmering faintly like cold metal. And its face, God, its face. The eyes were human, desperately human, but everything around them sagged as though struggling to remember how to hold a shape. It took one step forward, dragging its foot, leaving a trail of that warm, dark smear. Key, it whispered, voice fractured. Key carrier. The boy stumbled back, pressing against the wall. Finn barked furiously, teeth bared. The creature flinched, shrinking slightly, like the boy's fear fed it, but the dog's defiance wounded it. Key, it repeated, reaching a trembling hand toward him. Its fingers were too long, too thin. The boy recognized the voice, not from his life, but from the corridor last night. The voice he'd heard calling in the snow, the voice that didn't breathe, the voice of something between worlds. Help. Failing. Too cold, the creature rasped, and for a moment its features flickered into the shape of a man. That man's face looked familiar, not from life, but from pictures. Old, faded photos his mother kept in a drawer she never opened. His grandfather, or a memory of him shaped by whatever had escaped this bunker. I am not your key, the boy whispered, stepping backward. The creature shuddered, its outline blurring. Need, carrier, system, destabilized. It lurched forward suddenly, faster than its twisted form suggested. The boy bolted. Finn sprinted beside him, barking wildly. They fled down the corridor, the creature's dragging steps echoing behind them, gaining speed. The bunker felt alive now, humming, shifting, awakening. The boy rounded a corner, slammed through a half-open door, and shoved it closed just as the creature thudded against it from the other side. The hinges buckled. Finn barked, pushing his body against the door to help. "We need to trap it," the boy gasped. The room they'd entered was cluttered with rusted machinery, heavy crates, and metal shelving. He scanned the walls, then saw a large lever with a Cyrillic label. Pytanie odkluchet, cut power. He didn't know what it controlled, but he had no choice. He pulled it. Sparks erupted. Lights flickered violently. The humming stopped. The entire bunker seemed to inhale. Then, silence. The creature hammered the door again, weaker this time. Then once more, even weaker. The boy pressed his ear to the metal. He heard a faint, strained whisper. "Cold." And then, nothing. Finn whined softly, tail low. The boy waited several long seconds before easing the door open. The hallway lay still. The creature had collapsed, its form crumpled like clay losing heat. Its limbs lay twisted, frozen mid-reach. The boy approached, shaking. Its eyes were closed now, frost gathering along its skin. It looked almost peaceful, almost human. He knelt beside it, unsure whether to fear it or pity it. Whatever it had been, soldier, prisoner, experiment, it had never asked for this fate. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Finn sniffed the frozen form, ears pulling back. The boy stood, scanning the corridor. Without power, the bunker felt like a tomb again. But something else nagged at him, a faint vibration beneath the floor, deeper than machinery, as if the mountain itself was reacting. He didn't want to find out what would happen if another containment breached. "We're leaving," he said, voice firmer now. "Now." They hurried back toward the stairs, passing broken glass, scattered documents, the shattered crate. But as they reached the base of the ladder, a sharp metallic groan echoed through the bunker, distant but unmistakable. The boy froze. Finn growled, ears pinned. He realized with a cold rush that cutting the power had disabled more than the creature. It had disabled whatever systems were still barely holding this place together. Pressure valves hissed open down the hall. Rusted pipes clanged. Somewhere deeper, a heavy door slammed. "The mountain's collapsing it," he whispered, or trying to erase it. He scrambled up the ladder, Finn right behind him. The hatch above rattled violently before he pushed it open, snow spilling onto his head. When he climbed out, he gasped. The ridge was shaking. Snow fell from the trees in heavy sheets. The earth beneath the bunker pulsed with a deep rumble, like something large shifting under the ground. The boy slammed the hatch shut and shoved a fallen log across it, though he knew it wouldn't stop anything determined. Finn barked at the ground, tail stiff. "We need Crowell," the boy said, already moving toward the path. They half ran, half slid down the ridge as the mountain trembled, the sound echoing through the valley like distant thunder. By the time the boy reached Crowell's cabin, the old man was already outside, staring up at the ridge with fear carved deep into his face. "You opened it," Crowell whispered as the boy approached. The boy shook his head breathlessly. "It was already open. Something got out. I closed it, I think. But now the bunker." Crowell grabbed his shoulders hard. "What did you see?" The boy hesitated, then answered, "My grandfather, but not really him." Crowell's grip tightened. "Describe it." The boy told him everything. The creature, the tanks, the harness, the faint warmth, the word key. Crowell's expression darkened with each detail. Moraz Keep wasn't a shelter, he said quietly. It was a gate. Your grandfather didn't just serve there. He guarded it. The boy trembled. Guarded what? Crowell took a long breath, voice barely steady. A failsafe. When the Soviets built their northern bunkers, they experimented with biological conduction, living keys that stabilized energy fields. Your grandfather was one of them. The boy felt his knees weaken. And I'm the last leftover key. Crowell nodded grimly. Whatever escaped recognized your blood. That's why it sought you. It tried to merge, the boy whispered. Crowell's eyes hardened. Then it's dying. Without a host, those things can't maintain shape, but the bunker won't let the failure go unnoticed. The ridge rumbled again, louder this time. Finn barked, backing away. We need to destroy it, the boy said, before it collapses the entire mountain. Crowell nodded slowly. There's a charge buried beneath the foundation. Old emergency demolition protocol. But only a key can activate it. The boy went pale. Meaning me. Crowell grabbed his coat, his old rifle, and a bundle of tools. We don't have long. They hurried back toward the ridge, snow slicing across their faces as the shaking intensified. When they reached the bunker, steam hissed from new cracks in the ground. The hatch rattled as if something deep below pounded against it. The boy lifted the lantern again, though the daylight was fading fast. Where's the charge? He shouted over the rumbling. Crowell pointed toward a vent half buried under roots. Below that panel. But the activation node needs your blood. It's coded to your line. The boy hesitated. If I do this, what happens to me? Crowell didn't answer immediately. The mountain groaned again. Finally, he said, The bunker goes. Whatever's inside goes. You survive, if you're fast. That wasn't comforting. But the boy nodded. He crawled toward the vent, Finn guarding his back, and pried away the metal grate. A small terminal lay beneath, ancient but intact, pulsing with a faint orange glow, the bunker's last heartbeat. Crowell knelt beside him. Cut your hand. Press it to that panel. The boy swallowed hard, pulled the knife from his belt, and made a careful cut. Warm blood dripped onto the cold steel. The panel glowed brighter, trembling as though tasting his identity. A line of Cyrillic text flickered, then settled. Authorization accepted. Sequence enabled. A low siren groaned through the bunker, deep enough to shake snow from branches. Finn barked anxiously. Run! Crowell shouted. They sprinted back up the ridge as the bunker rumbled violently behind them. The snow cracked open along the hatch's edges, and a plume of steam shot upward. The ground buckled. The boy stumbled, Crowell pulling him to his feet. The first explosion thundered beneath them. The mountain roared like a wounded beast. The ridge shuddered violently, throwing them to the ground. A column of smoke erupted from the hatch as the concrete chambers below collapsed inward, crushing whatever remained inside. The boy shielded his face as a wave of heat rolled across the snow. Finn pressed tightly against him, trembling. When the tremors finally quieted, darkness and stillness settled over the ridge. The bunker had folded into itself, leaving only a smoking scar in the earth where the hatch once lay. The snow around it hissed and melted into steaming pools. Crowell exhaled shakily. It's done. The boy nodded, though his heart still raced. Finn licked his hand, whining softly. The wind returned, brushing through the pines like the mountain breathing again. The boy stared at the ruined earth. My grandfather. He kept it sealed his whole life. Crowell placed a hand on his shoulder. And now you did the same. The boy felt a strange mix of grief and peace settle inside him. The mountain no longer felt hostile, just tired and grateful. "What now?" he asked. Crowell smiled faintly. "Now the mountain sleeps again." They walked down the ridge slowly, Finn leading with renewed ease, tail swaying. As they reached the cabin, the boy paused and looked back. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke and old metal, but nothing else stirred. The ridge stood quiet, no longer humming, no longer listening. He realized then that some burdens weren't chains, they were inheritances, and he had carried his to the end. When he stepped inside, Finn curled near the fire, already drifting to sleep. The boy sat beside him, breath finally steady, knowing the mountain would remember him, not as a key, but as a guardian,